It's the Rangers Journal Night.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Billy Rankin, I'm your host for this evening. Me and Andrew had an arm wrestle before it and I won, so Andrew, you can take Friday's pod. How are you doing this evening, mate?
I'm not too bad, pal. I'm not too bad. You're quite good at the arm wrestling, especially over online. That's impressive, mate. 10 out of 10.
Thank you very much. Jock, thank you. Welcome back. How are you doing?
Not too bad, mate. Just glad to be here and we can get stuck into everything that's happened over the past week.
It does seem like every kind of pod is some cathartic treatment for us all, doesn't it? Last but not least, Ryan, are you okay, mate?
Yeah, ready to go, mate. Ready to go.
Well, we did do a post-match yesterday, Andrew, with Scotty, so I don't really want to go into the game in any great detail, but 24 hours on or so, what's your thoughts on the game as a whole?
Game as a whole, do you know what? You take the game in isolation and it's a fairly routine win for Rangers. You know, it's very rare that we go 3-0 up, 25 minutes into a game. It's very rare we actually pounce on mistakes. In that respect, it was good. It's that usual kind of drop-off we see in the second half. However, kind of understandable when you are 3-0 up and the game's essentially done, especially on a cold January evening. Just a shame we couldn't see some of the youngsters coming on, maybe getting a bit of game time. No Bailey Rice in the squad, which was a shame. But yeah, it's a routine win at home, like most our wins seem to be at home this season. It's the away form that seems to be something completely different.
It is. Jock, what was your, we never spoke to you yesterday, but what was your kind of thoughts on the match as a whole?
Yeah, Andrew's pretty much covered everything. As typical Rangers, start fantastic, first 20-25 minutes. Took advantage of a couple of mistakes, scored a good goal from a cutback, and then just they do what they always do. They just kind of sort of go into themselves and just go through the motions, concede the goal, gets a wee bit tetchy. They kind of come into the game after that and grow a bit of confidence, and then we see the game out, and we get another 3 points at home. And it's as Andrew says, it's not the home form that's an issue at all for us this season. It's the away form that's ultimately killing us in the league.
Yep. Ryan, we never picked up on this in the post-match review yesterday. I wouldn't say the biggest contentious issues, but there was a couple of things that went on in the game. Looking back on their goal, there's a wee bit of a holding on Hadji, I felt. At least it never got mentioned on the TV. And also an elbow in the face for Enciala. These, again, both went, and a stamp, obviously, on an Igaman as well. All didn't even get brought up in the commentary that I was listening to. Did you make any of those incidents?
Yeah, I think they've kind of went back on it and said that the contact with the elbow in NCL was kind of purely accidental. There's no kind of malice or intent to do it. So it's kind of a sore one to take. At the end of the day, it still happened, whether it was intention or not. He's still taking a sore one. So I think if that was up on our end, we'd certainly be looking for the penalty or the free kick and that kind of side of things. So it's a wee bit of a sore one for us. Just a really kind of poor goal to lose. Kind of overall, it just seems kind of very basic. There doesn't seem to be a kind of a particular danger man in the middle of the goals and anything like that you got to kind of watch. There's not like a Christopher Julian or a Bobo Baldi or anything like that you got to kind of pay particular attention to. So it's just another kind of very poor goal again that we've lost, and it's just one of a catalogue that we seem to be losing recently.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think we did mention it was kind of soft defending yesterday, Andrew, didn't we? How do you see Igaman's performance in the context of how he's kind of bust through the last 2 months or so? Was that another up there performance from him?
Aye, yeah. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Sorry.
No, that's all right. No, go Ryan.
You're speaking to me there, mate. I'm sorry.
On you go, Ryan. It's fine.
No, I'm just done. No,
go Ryan.
No, so I thought he's doing everything I say. I'm very much that Igaman and Danilo should be starting every game for us, to be honest with you. I don't understand why he drops them away from home, because they're two of our better players and two of our bigger goal threats. So we've commented before about how Igaman likes to wander so much, and he's doing a lot of yards for us. So again, it's not doing himself any harm as far as getting that big move, maybe potentially at the end of the season is concerned.
Oh, yeah, you've opened a box there, Ryan. But I'll go back to you, Andrew. His performances, they're not all 10 out of 10s, but I thought yesterday was fairly strong. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. He gives us something completely different to what the rest of our strike force has. Early on in the game, it was a ball in, and he just took an optimistic swipe at it. And you know what? If the keeper's just off his line slightly, it would have gone in. He's very good at the one-touch finishes. That's what you need in the box. Somebody when the ball's pinging around. No disrespect, but we know what Dessers is like. As we saw later on in the game, too many touches sometimes for his own good, and Igman's completely different. He's got that power as well. He's very good at helping it link up with some of the counters as well. We've seen him, chest the ball, chip it up, and then punt it forward well out to other players. His goal as well when he was running into the box, that determination, despite the fact the defender was doing fairly okay keeping up with him, he still managed to get there, got on the end of it. He's showing something completely different, hunger, desire, and it's just something that more players in this team do need. And yeah, it might not always be 10 out of 10, but you do see you see what he does offer, and he does bring us just something completely different. Him and Danilo, as Ryan said, together is the way forward.
Jock, when Ryan mentioned Danilo and Igman both playing, especially away from home as well, I seen you nodding your head, so I'm assuming you're in agreement with that. Can you think of why the manager would drop Danilo in the away games especially?
I don't know if he's trying to go for the more sort of defensive approach in the away game, and he's maybe he's sacrificing Danilo's sort of defensive work rate in that sense. But from what I've seen, Danilo seems to do okay. He comes back and he wins the ball, and like the goal Czerny scored yesterday started from proper tackling and winning the ball straight to Danilo. And Danilo's first instinct was to put the ball through, and Czerny's one on the keeper, rounds the keeper and scores. So yeah, it works at home. So I don't see why he keeps chopping and changing in the away games. Personally, I think he's wanting a more defensive minded work rate in the midfield. But I still, in my opinion, I don't think we should be playing with two sitting in any Scottish league fixture. Unless maybe we're carrying injuries. I know we are at the moment, but I think we should be on the front foot and we should be looking to attack teams no matter we're home or away. So yeah.
Ryan, we've said that for a number of years, even from when Gerrard was here about playing two defensive midfielders. I don't understand it, but there's obviously something tactically that they're covering, whether they're covering for the defence. Are you in favour of the two holding midfield players?
I was when we had better fullbacks. Yeah, because you see with the defensive fullback, obviously the likes of Tavernier had better legs and he was going up the right hand side. Used to see Ryan Jack quite often go over and covering for him. He kind of slotting over. So when we had the flying fullbacks with Tavernier and Barisic, yeah, absolutely, because you were bringing more guys into the top part, the final third. But now that we don't really have that, not for me, not at all.
No. Andrew, move on from the game now, because we've called this between us. We've called this episode "Kicking the Can." Was it further down the road? Because we did a pod a few weeks back where we said we're kicking the can down the road when it comes to the manager. Well, Patrick Stewart did come out on Friday and speak to select members of the press and some podcasts as well, I believe, and outlined the board's position with Clement at the moment. And that does seem to be, or his words, they are backing him, but results have to improve. I guess, please feel free to bring up any other points you made in that interview and any interesting points that you thought, because it really is. I think the fan base as a whole think it's over for Clement, and all he is doing is kicking the can further down the road for whatever reason that I'm not sure of. But what was your thoughts on what you said?
Do you know what? It wasn't really too much of a surprise. You see the results on the park themselves. We had a chat ourselves all between us in the WhatsApp group on the week of the Spurs and Cup final week. And I think we all pretty much categorically said that, you know what, if he has a bad result against Spurs and loses that cup final, he won't be here. He just can't be. No Rangers manager survives that, even if it is a close game. And yet he's still here. Yes, he's got a 3-0 win over Celtic, but that has meant absolutely nothing. With dropping all the other points in all the other games, Motherwell, St Mirren. I'm even struggling to remember all the games, to be honest with you, because there's been so many points dropped. However, at the start of the season, when we saw, obviously, when Bennett was the man in charge. Obviously, we had Clement getting that year extension on the eve of the new season. Now, personally, I think that was to make up for some shortcomings. I think Clement wasn't getting what he was expecting to get. And I think a lot of allowances have been made for Clement for this season. Obviously, you're not going to tell the fan base that, oh, you know what, it's a bit of a free hit this season, because it isn't acceptable. And it isn't. And I understand that to a degree. However, it didn't really surprise me. Don't get me wrong, it's interesting when you hear from a new CEO. Has he got the same vision? Obviously, it does seem to be that the board does still have the same vision. We're going down the same road. We're not chopping and changing managers, because it does set you back a bit, and I do understand that. However, there are failings that have taken place from the board. That is fact. You know, the Broomland stands, you know, some transfers and stuff. However, there are things that Clement has done, and a lot of things tactically in games. You know, we've seen him actually start to tweak a formation that has been working with two up top. Then he's reverted from that. He's having that double pivot, like Jock says. Don't really need that in Scotland. We don't. Certain games, yes, high pressure games like Old Firm games, yes, you might need that for the fullbacks to be covered, but we don't need that. So, yeah, in a roundabout way, it didn't surprise me per se, because if the board were really concerned, I think one, they would Clement would have been relieved of his duties before now, and two, there is that question as well, can we afford to let him go? And I think that's another thing as well. I don't think we can either in some respects. There's always money somewhere, but you know, this board has been pumping a bit of money into the club as we speak this season, and they can't keep doing it. So I understand it from all points of view. I sound like a politician. Apologies.
No, I mean, you can hold a few different opinions at the same time, mate, because you can think it's time for him to go, but also understand that would be financially not a good decision for us, I guess. Jock, I'll come to you next. The manager gets the dreaded backing of the board. Do you think that actually helps him, or is it more of a hindrance to him getting that backing from Patrick Stewart?
That's a tough one, to be fair. I thought my fear was he would win the Old Firm and that would buy him time, and he did win the Old Firm, and then we have a shamble at Hibs, and then we sort of just keep going the way we're going. It's split the fans. There's more so than what's already going on. I think the backing that he's get. I don't think anybody was really surprised whenever the statement came out and the points that was made, that they were sticking with him, and I can understand why, because we were in a bit of a cycle there, always around October, November, where we're chopping and changing managers, and it's not sustainable, because you're end up paying more in managers sacking fees than you are in transfer fees, and we're crying out for transfers, aren't we? So I think it was interesting to see the internal review of the football club as a whole, the football operations, I think was highlighted, and that's going to be an external review, which I think is going to be positive from that. Interesting to see if that shines any light on Clement's involvement in things, something that maybe we've not seen or heard yet, in terms of maybe players, the way he operates, things that we just don't see. I'd be interested to see if anything comes from that. I still think he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and claw any faith back with the fans, because he seems to be making the similar mistakes with chopping and changing the formation, particularly in the away games, and it doesn't seem to learn from those mistakes, because he's done that at the tail end of last season. He's carried it on, and is where we are now. We're January. So he's carried for most of this season as well. So yeah, I think the backing, it's put him in a difficult position, because he's sink or swim now.
Yep.
Really?
Ryan, I'll come to you on kind of carrying on from that point, and he does say in that interview that he'll be the manager unless things don't improve. Well, the implication there is if things don't improve, then he's going to be sacked. No ifs or buts. There's the cast iron guarantee.
Yeah. So what's the definition of improvement? Is it clawing the deficit back? Because at this moment in time, it's 15 points. So if he carries on losing, they will inevitably start dropping points. I think that's probably just a matter of course of the season. They'll start to probably lose a couple of players through injury and stuff. And they might just start kind of getting a bit comfortable in their own performances and might start losing a couple of points. So it may well be that the improvements kind of masked purely because they're dropping points rather than we're carrying on winning. The only kind of saving grace is that we are still very much in a European competition. And we've done pretty well in it, to be honest with you. I think we've kind of punched above our weight on a couple of occasions with it, particularly away in Malmo. Thought it was a great result. Away in Olympiacos, another one. So we've got a big game next week as far as that's concerned. I think probably what you're talking about, things like free hits and stuff like that, go down to Old Trafford. I think probably is a free hit. So, we don't really necessarily need to win that, and if anything we take from that's a bonus. We've got the game against USG at Ibrox, which pretty much is a must-win game for us. But, as far as getting things like you're talking about, getting credit back in the bank and stuff and restoring the faith, if we do get a right good run in Europe and find ourselves in a European quarter-final, does that not merit some sort of success for the season? All right, domestically, an absolute bomb scare, but if we find ourselves at the business end of a European competition, do you look back and say that was actually quite successful? It's quite a kind of hard thing to judge.
Yeah. I'll stay with you, Ryan, just to kind of mix up the responses from everybody, if that's okay. But he did mention bringing in one or two players. This is Patrick Stewart, not Clement, obviously. We're in dire need of backup in the centre-half position, especially. And probably need more than one or two players, but I think that's really going to be it. Do you think this is going to be all dependent on selling the likes of Dessers this transfer window? He's the most likely, I think, to leave, but obviously if we get rid of some others.
Dessers, Matondo and Dow are the ones that everyone keeps speaking about, the ones that are kind of surplus to requirements, if you like, or just simply just not meeting the grade. And you're probably talking the guts about £60,000 to £75,000 a week worth of wages at that point. And you could probably go and sign yourself 3, possibly 4 quality loan signings from that. So I'd like to think we've got enough money available just now to sign 1 or 2, regardless if guys don't leave, because ultimately we've seen that you sometimes can't force them to leave and sometimes don't want to leave. But we're screaming for 2 centre-halves. We're potentially looking to get into games with NCL and Leon King as centre-halves. So we've went through Balogun, Suter, Proper and Sterling to leave ourselves with 2 kids basically with very little experience propping up our defence. So we need to go out there and sign something. Johnny Evans for me fits the bill all day long. An 18-month deal, a great professional to have in the building. We know fine well he's a Rangers man, and all that everyone says, that doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. It does mean something. So he will do a job for us for 18 months, absolutely no problem at all. We just need to make his agent happy. We need to make Man United happy. I think he'd be very easy for us to deal with. I don't think he would have too many demands to come up to Ibrox, to be honest with you.
Andrew, I've seen you quite violently shaking your head there in agreement with Johnny Evans. To be honest with me, he came out of left field. I just assumed he'd retired, to be honest with you. But he fits that kind of Davy Weir mould, strong, physical. He's getting to the end of his career, but he's got the brain that he doesn't have to, be running around like a headless chicken. Can you give me any more benefits to Johnny Evans coming to us?
Well, the fact that last season Manchester United, kind of kept him on I can't remember what type of deal they got him on, but they kept him on and he was absolutely fantastic for them because he was commanding the defence. Now, don't get me wrong, Manchester United aren't the team that they were years ago. We all know that. But I know obviously people don't have to be Rangers fans, but it does help, and it really does. You get somebody that really understands that you need to win every week, somebody that can be commanding with that defence. Like you say, Davy Weir is the best comparison. It really is. You see that kind of defender that can, somebody with like Enciala, you could have that relationship that Davy Weir had with Danny Wilson potentially. Some of the younger guys coming through, you've got an older head there coaching them through the game. Frustratingly, we're going to have 1 or 2 signings as pretty much confirmed, and probably one of them is going to be a defender. And you know what, Johnny Evans, it fits the bill perfectly there because it's somebody that's almost ready-made off the shelf, so to speak. And it fit perfectly, absolutely perfectly. It really would. And like Ryan says, he wouldn't be too difficult to deal with. I think he'd like to come to Rangers and kind of, for his last season or two. I think it'd be easy. It's just dealing with Manchester United and, where do they see him? Because obviously he has been handy for them in the past couple of seasons. So, yeah.
Jock, just kind of going back to something that was mentioned earlier on, and that was this review that Patrick Stewart talked about. Is there any areas you're hoping that he discovers or finds out something? And it's an independent review, and he said that the company will have no axe to grind. So I guess the previous reviews we've done, the internal ones, maybe did have set out pre-conditions or pre-supplications, whatever you want to call it. What are you kind of hoping this new independent kind of look at the club finds out?
I'd like to think they could try and narrow down the faults for the youth pathway. As again, there are a chance at the weekend to bring on some of the youth players, and don't know what we've seen. Like Rice has just been shifted up, supposedly, getting a locker in the first team, and that's his first team squad now. Next game, he's not even on the bench. He's not even in the squad. Young chap, is it Finlay Curtis, is scoring goals for fun. Doesn't look like he's going to get any. There hasn't been much of a pathway for Rangers youth for a long time. Gerrard talked about it, and he gave a few players chances. And whenever we got to the Europe League final and had that game that they played, basically Van Bronckhorst played a youth team, should have wiped the floor with Hearts, Lowry, and such, and that was standard PFL football. So I'd like them to try and highlight where that's going wrong and how we can try and address it. I also think it's a higher level. I think that should be a Scottish Football Association thing. I think that's something that the Scottish FA should be looking at, and we should be promoting our youth players and Premier League fixtures. Again, transfer fees, selling players is something that drastically needs looked at. I know we were itching to get rid of some players over the summer, but the money that was initially announced at the AGM was scandalous for some of the talent that walked out the door. So again, that's another thing that's going to need addressed. And I'd be interested to see if there's anything ideas come from it from his perspective, being at Man United as well. If there's anything that we're far behind in, that's something that the Premier League's trialing or ahead in terms of this footballing decisions and scouting things. We really need to step it up because we need to bring in talent. We'll find Igamani fantastic. We need 10, 12, 15 of him all around the first team squad, because that's the model that we need to try and catch up on our side of the city on, really, isn't it?
Just on that point of somebody coming in for the Premier League, Ryan, Steven Gerrard came in to the club and noticed how far behind we were with the trainings, whatever regimes, the dietary things in the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. So is that something maybe Patrick Stewart comes in and sees how Man United, you might not think they're the best run club in the world, but they are a Premier League team. You'll have experience of seeing other teams as well. Are you kind of hoping for that kind of different viewpoint, an outside of Scotland viewpoint?
Absolutely. I mean, you've just got to kind of seen the turn in fortunes of Nico Raskin. And I think they're putting that down to his diet and the fact that the club have kind of provided him a chef. So there's just one example. And, at the start of the season, I actually thought Nico Raskin was on his way out at Ibrox, to be honest with you. I thought his chance had come and gone. He'd obviously come back from his injury and hadn't kind of, hit the ground running as such and taken his place. So there's so many things that fundamentally are wrong. Youth, 100% from what Jock was saying, has to be addressed. You look at the amount of players the likes of Liverpool are bringing through, real top quality players. They're just about to let Trent Alexander-Arnold go to Real Madrid, and they've got Conor Bradley sitting there ready to go, a ready-made replacement for him. We've got to be doing these sorts of things as well. I'd be kind of open to the option or an idea that the SPL should have. We spoke about the league as a whole looking at that. There used to be a rule a long time ago where you had to name so many other things, under 23 players on the bench. And they actually had to change the rule because a couple of the clubs were actually starting under 23 players but still had to name under 23 players on the bench. So why can we not make the bench bigger? You see it in the European competitions where you've got up to kind of 10 subs. So why can we not have that number of subs in the SPL or the SPA, whatever it is, the Premier League, so that if the opportunity comes like a Saturday or Sunday, we're 3-0 up, right? Okay, we've won the game. Rather than putting on the senior pros, where's the kids? Get them ready. So there's an option for both, so that if you are chasing a game, you can put your senior pros on to try and win you the game. But if you have won the game comfortably, there's an option there. There's so many things. That's obviously league level, but club level, I don't even think we'd be privy to the amount of stuff that probably needs fixed, to be honest with you. I'm just hoping it gets done.
No, yeah, I think you're quite right, especially with the 5 subs now. Why we're limited to how many people can be on the bench. If the subs are now, if there's now 5 instead of 3, we should have more options than on the bench to choose from. So no, I get your point. There's one thing I wanted to go back in the comments, Andrew, to do with Johnny Evans. So I don't want to bring it back up, but Scott B says the manager doesn't want Evans. For me, it should be nothing to do with the manager at this point. We shouldn't be a club with a manager as having a big say on the players that come in. He should be coaching the ones that he has bought for him by a director of football.
Correct, Billy. Football's completely different now to what it used to be. We're not going back to the days of Clough and managers, choosing their teams and stuff. And the players that they want. Obviously, they'll have some sort of input. However, a lot will be going through Niels Coppen. Obviously, there is a player trading model that is being looked at that is, starting to, I guess it's starting to go in motion a little bit from some of the from the transfers that we've had from the start of the season, like players like Egerman and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the thing, especially with the connections with Patrick Stewart and stuff to Manchester United. I do feel that it is, it's like written in the stars for Johnny Evans really to be at Rangers. And I don't think Clement would necessarily turn him down. I don't think he's really in a position to be turning down an experienced defender right now when you've got some big games coming up. And you know what, if we get through to obviously we're looking like we'll get through to the next round of the Europa League. If we can skip that round, if we finish higher up, you know what, you're only a few games away from getting to the real crunch point, the quarters and the semis, which would give us something to shout about this season, because we've had absolutely nothing to shout about this season. But yeah, you're correct. Football is completely different now. It's not all on Clement. The board will be working with Clement and Coppen, but there does need to be a bit of experience in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I'm going to move on to a similar type of subject, but move on a little bit. And I've got in my notes here, briefly summarise why there is fans' frustration with the current board. So I guess if I can summarise that for you, and feel free to add to it, because a few things have been mentioned. Certainly from the 55 season, there's a perception that they held on to players that were worth money and didn't invest in the squad, haven't backed managers, and now we're in a position where we have sacked 2 managers, probably on the way to sacking a third one, and the squad hasn't improved since that 55 season. Am I missing anything else out, Jock? Why other reasons why the fans are frustrated with the current board?
I think you could probably throw in the whole carry on at the start of the season with the stadium, but again, you can't really. It's one of those things. If you're ordering parts for China, and things. It's just one of those things. Things get delayed, construction and that kind of side of things. I can understand that. Projects like that get delays all the time. It's just part and parcel. But some people still hold that against the board, so you could throw that in there. Again, probably the lack of communication between the board and fans in certain situations as well has been a long, outstanding problem at the club. Stretching back, nearly decades, really, I guess, and that it's just always been an issue. That's why there was a fans liaison board and stuff was set up. Bennett tried something along those lines, and his predecessor, the boy with the hair, Bisgrove, tried that as well. He tried, and to be fair, he did actually attend some of the things, so he did try and bridge that gap between the fans and the board as well. That's all I can think of off the top of my head for now.
No, that's okay, mate. I just was to kind of summarise why this feeling has kind of developed in the last while. Ryan, I'll come to you on obviously on the same subject, but I don't really remember the maybe we're in an echo chamber because we're online and we're chatting. We're maybe not. It's maybe not the same as your group of mates and your football team all have the same opinion, but I don't remember the feeling towards the board being as bad as this since the Spurs were in there.
Yeah. Well, I pulled together quite a long document, to be honest with you, for the Gers TV. Stuff that I could tell you about the board that's just come back. I mean, endorsing a cryptocurrency. Remember the Rangers token to start with, and encouraging average Rangers fans to be buying a Rangers without really explaining what kind of high risk nature there. I think it was if you'd bought something with £500, you were worth about £3.60. So it was encouraging Rangers fans to get involved in something they could possibly lose money with. Off-site hospitality with Chris Traynor, who's a known Celtic fan as well, at the Radisson Red, which was taking the Champions League tickets away from regular supporters. The failure to do anything as far as with Seville was concerned. We didn't have any sort of beanbag facility in the stadium and stuff like that. So obviously 100,000 was travelled across to Spain to go and see the game. But some of us weren't as lucky to do that, and the club did nothing for those people. We were all jammed into our supporters clubs and were jammed into local pubs and stuff to see it when the club should actually have done something for themselves for it. I've got a list the length of my arm of just mishaps. We never seemed out of court for about 2 or 3 years as well. We're getting our name dragged through the mud as far as litigation's concerned as well. So it's just one thing after another thing after another after another. These things can be forgiven if we're winning and we're qualifying for big European competitions and stuff in the Champions League, but they're not. It seems to be these things costing us success because they're having to pay for other things when they could be looking after us. It's madness. I mean, even just at the weekend they were talking about how Edmondson House just isn't big enough to even host Rangers events. The AGM that they just had there a couple of months ago wasn't even on our own site. We had to hire a facility down the road to host it because we built something that's too small at £12 million. It's mad, and I completely understand everything that's going on, and I fully back all the people that walked out in the 55th minute on Sunday.
Andre, there's a few extra points in there that I hadn't considered. Thanks for that, Ryan, mate. Collating the list. It sounds bad actually when you hear it like that. And as Ryan said, you can, I don't know if forgive is the right word, but you can overlook these kind of costly errors when you're winning. The board, they own the club, the people there, and they are investing money. And we would have to, if you want to change the board, have to come up with money to buy the shares off them. Where it sticks in my craw a wee bit, to use an old-fashioned term, is they have wasted so much of the fans' money. As well as putting their own in, they have wasted even more of ours.
100%. That's the main thing. That and not waiving enough Premier League titles for the kind of investment that we have had. You look at things like the Patterson sale, Calvin Bassey. You look at the run to Seville. Obviously, that would have accumulated some money. Now, don't get me wrong. We were losing money most years, so obviously some of that money's gone to plug some gaps. I get projects like Edmondson House, but as Ryan said, I was quite surprised at the size of it. It's a very intimate venue, and that's kind of being polite. Obviously, I remember hearing from the outset that they were never planning to have AGMs there just because of the sheer volume of people. But still, you should be doing things like that. You should have a facility for that. They want to have a kind of premier music venue, so to speak. Then have something a bit bigger, something you can really utilize on match days, and have beanbag facilities in somewhere that's bigger. These things like the Australian debacle, obviously, you look at that. I can see where Bisgrove, what he was looking at. He was looking at the pound signs because, that would have been about £3 million, and that's what you get for winning the Premier League in Scotland. You look at some of these failings, and specifically when you look at Bisgrove, he was a businessman. Lots of itty-bitty deals where we'd, have official wash partner in Molten Brown, official chocolate partner in Cadbury's. You started to think our kits are going to end up looking like some of these Mexican kits that you see in like Mexican League One, but it did bring in money, even if it was minimal money. it's the money we've wasted, which has been frustrating. This crypto thing, like Ryan was talking about, it's just insane. Really, especially when it's something financial. We've had stands named after companies that seem to have just disappeared off the face of the earth. And don't get me wrong, they can't predict the future with some of these companies. If somebody's willing to offer money, I understand it, but we've got a lot of investors in this club, and the money has not been spent well enough. And if we could just have won a couple of league titles, financially, we'd be in a much sounder footing by qualifying for the Champions League. And it's not as if we haven't spent. And that's the frustrating thing. You can argue, oh, you know what, we're a club, we've had some bad times, we just haven't got the money to compete. We have spent some seasons more than that lot at the other end of the city. And we've not spent wisely. It's some of these contracts. I get there was a whole thing about paying players wages as if they were champions, because that's what you're aiming for. Didn't work. And that's the thing, you look at this as a rebuild at the minute. You know what? It's not a rebuild, it's a downsizing. I think that's the words that we've got to look at the minute. Money has not been invested well. Some of these people have moved on. But we do have to look at now, is Edmonton House, when are we going to likely see a profit on that now? Because is that going to take 5-10 years? All right, fine. If it does break something in the future, brilliant. It is nice to have a museum. It's nice to have something where you can see the history, but is it paying for itself? Is it being staffed to the levels that it needs to be for that? Yeah, I think that is the most frustrating thing. It's, that lot at the other end of the city, you don't really hear about what they're doing, with deals with companies. They don't need to. They just have their thing, and they just win the league every year and get a lot of money from the Champions League. Yeah, we need to strip things back, I think, a little bit more, simplify things. And I'm sure the board, they've done, I don't want to say they've done some things well in the respect of we don't have any outstanding litigations anymore. That should be the case, full stop, anyway. That shouldn't be a thing you cheer about. That should just be normal. But sorry, I'm ranting on now. But Ryan's hit the nail on the head with the failings there. There are things you look at and go, yeah, not good.
The one thing that you said there is the downsizing. I just feel I've been hearing downsizing since the early 2000s. It's just, I don't know if the things like the wage bill creeps up. We're paying players to come to us that wouldn't get that wage anywhere else, and we then struggle to get them moved, not rid of, I don't mean it that way, but to move them on when they've not worked out for us. I mean, some of these players might go on and still play well for another type of league, another type of team. Ryan, the board have put in place this review, as I was saying earlier on. Can you see anything they can do in the short term to turn around the kind of fans' feeling about them at the moment?
Sack the manager, unfortunately.
Simple as that. Yeah. I just feel it's even Patrick Stewart said it's the one thing they can do, but it's not a silver bullet that's going to solve everything else at the club. So I wonder if we're just looking at it, we're too close, and we need to kind of come back a bit and look at it from a longer term perspective.
It wouldn't be my choice, to be honest with you. I was actually quite proud of how few managers we had, right up until Walter Smith, and then obviously with Ben. You actually could go into the Blue Room at Ibrox and actually see the mural of all the managers, on just one wall. And I was quite proud of that we had successful guys and that, there. So I don't want to be the club that change. I want us to have a manager that stays for 10, 15, 20 years, like an Arsene Wenger and Alex Ferguson. That's what I want for my club. But as far as a kind of quick to get the fans back on side, 9 out of 10 Rangers fans want the manager sacked. So if he's got to be the scapegoat, sorry, that's what it's got to be.
I think it might even be higher than that, mate, at this point. Joe, I'll come to you on it as well. Do you see the board that they can do anything else other than, say, sack the managers at the moment?
At the moment, probably not. It's the sack the managers, it's the easy one, isn't it, at the moment, to get to try and get some support back and get folk behind the board. But we're just going to have to ride the rest of the season out, because we know obviously he's been backed. Hope that we do keep progressing in the Europa League as far as we can go, beyond February, and then try and go on a Scottish Cup run and hope for the best, and just try and finish as close to them as possible. That's the only goal. And the board are just at the moment are just going to be passengers unless things get worse, and then that obviously increases tension between the fans and the board, and the board will have no choice but to act, because the fans will vote with their feet. That started at the weekend. If things don't improve, that'll continue. That's just going to be fact. And then the fans might decide to turn it up a notch, and there could be protests. It could be all sorts. So the board are in a position where the only thing they can do to try and claw back anything at the moment is sack the manager. That's the only thing they have in their back pocket at the moment, really.
Andrew, let's touch on the elephant in the room, I guess, which was the protest at the weekend. And I'm not saying the Union Bears were right or they were wrong, or anybody who stayed or booed or whatever was right or wrong. It's up to each individual fan to choose what they want to do. But it started getting the messages around our chats on Saturday night that the Union Bears and others, it wasn't just them, had organised this walkout on the 55th minute to symbolise that's when the board kind of stopped looking after the club properly. That's a kind of summary of it. They did do it, and I say some fans booed what they were doing. What was your reaction to what was your thoughts on that as a protest, first and foremost?
Well, like you say, Billy, fans are entitled to do what they want. They've paid their ticket to go into the stadium. They've put their money in, and they are doing how they see fit to show the club that they're not happy. It's a bit between a rock and a hard place, and I think that was echoed. I was quite surprised, to be fair, and I think a lot of us, in some respects, when you look at Twitter, and obviously with Twitter, there's algorithms. Sometimes you're swayed more towards one thing just because you're seeing more of it. If you went by Twitter, you'd imagine Ibrox would have been empty by 56 minutes. Wasn't the case. Obviously, a lot of people didn't turn up either. But there's other factors there. It was a cold, January. Nobody's got money in January. People are doing dry January as well. There's a few things that come in. Granted, that doesn't always come in when you support your club. I think this is starting to split the fan base now. I think there are fans out there that do understand that, there isn't money at the minute, and there's a whole back line injured, and we are trying to compete with a team that have spent the back end of 20 odd million on two players that don't start every game. That's where we are now. I think some people do understand as well that the people that do own the club, the board that have certain percentages, whether it's Oasis Limited, Dave King's company, whether it's Douglas Park, these people have put money in over the years. Yes, it might not have been spent well, but these people will be looking to get money back at some point as well, and that is something. So I think people do look at some of these things. I know it's not easy to just be running a football club. I can totally understand some of the things behind the scenes are probably quite difficult, especially in the Scottish climate, especially being in the Scottish League. Personally, with the protest, will it really do anything? I don't know. I really don't. I think the only way that there's going to be any sort of change personally is, I think, if the pressure gets to Clement, and I think if he leaves by himself, I think that's the only way that there's going to ever be any sort of change. I don't see that at the minute. I don't think he's lost the dressing room at the minute either. However, comments in the week, like he kind of threw Wigman under the bus a little bit, saying he was too far out wide. He didn't really pick on any other players in the team that weren't performing well. Okay, that's a bit strange, but it's like we say, kicking the can down the road. We know how this goes, the stages of grief and everything. It kind of goes the way it goes. It ends with losing the dressing room. That's probably inevitable in some respects. But you know what? The Union Bears, they're not exactly the board's best friends. We all know this. The board's not happy with a lot of the things at match day. Some things like, flares and stuff like this, which keeps the club being fined. But at the same time, the board have worked well with them and actually accommodated them to put them behind the goal for the singing section. So I don't know. They're not happy. A lot of Rangers fans aren't happy at the minute, and I think there'll be more to come. Personally,
yeah. Ryan, can I ask you? Do you think that it was an effective demonstration, or is it going to be, if they want to force change, that more is needing done?
Right, to be honest, it's just had a negative effect. Any kind of goodwill and positivity that was left in our fan base has probably just been totally expunged by what's happened there. It's like Jock was saying, it's caused that great division now within the fan base, to the extent we're actually now booing each other from one side of the ground to the other side of the ground, which I don't think I've ever seen Rangers fans booing each other. Even when the fireworks and the flares and stuff like the pyros going off, we still don't boo each other. Whether you agree or not, but it's just got to the stage now where, they're talking about change and they want change, but what do you want? You don't want the board. The board are major shareholders. John Bennett's, we're into John Bennett for 11 million quid. So if you want John Bennett, who's a 5% shareholder, to go, you're going to have to give him 11 million. And he's just for starters. Yeah. We don't know what else is there. You really need this. If they want to do it, they need to go out and find somebody with a good few quid that's going to come in and do it. It's not like you're kind of, save our hearts and save the whale and stuff like that, where you can go out and buy them for £300,000. You're talking millions, tens of millions of pounds. If you want rid of this, is what you've got to do. And I think if somebody come up to Douglas Park, Chapter Stone, offered them a good few quid, you'd take it. You think Douglas Park's enjoying this? Graham Park's enjoying this? No, they just want their money back. So it's all right shouting and bawling, having banners and walking out the stadium and stuff. But ultimately, you need to find somebody that's got the money to sort it. That's the be all and end all. That may be Patrick Stewart's job. Again, something we're probably not privy to. Talk of America, there's talk of Saudis coming in and stuff like that. So, don't shit your own bed, excuse my language, but you don't, wait and see what happens. Give this guy Stewart a chance to see what happens. He's not even sat in his seat yet, probably, to do these things. So, got to give him a chance.
I think I'm with you with that, Ryan. I think it's that's what we've seen. Are we looking at it too closely? Patrick Stewart's just in the door. Give him time. He's obviously not wanting to sack a manager and causes that financial distress or cost. So I think I'm agreeing with you there, Jock. There's always a saying that if you get 4 Rangers fans stuck in a desert island, you'd have 5 fan supporters clubs or whatever the joke is. We don't tend to agree, but it's not a good look when fans are kind of divided like this, is it?
No, it's not, and you could understand both sides of that. Both sides of the argument. It's at this point now, if you want to do anything, you need to unite and come together. But you're not going to get that because you've got the old school fans versus the young team, as they're sort of dubbed, and it's a different mindset. It's a different culture, and we're just the old guys now, aren't we? To compare to what you're up against when it comes to these guys and their pyro. And don't get me wrong, the Union Bears create something that when it's in full flow, it's spectacular and it gets the full stadium going, it gets them rocking, and they've created some great songs that are moving away from the older generation of Rangers fans, songbooks and things like that. And they are bringing some positives to that, but again, it's each to their own. You've got to respect what one side wants to do, because at the end of the day, they've paid their money. They've paid for their seat. They can then do what they want with that seat at that point. If they want to get up and walk away, they can. If they want to sit, booing, like as Ryan says, booing from one side of the stadium to the other at your own fans, it just doesn't get you anywhere. And the stuff you're seeing on Twitter, again, folk arguing about out with each other, it's not what, as a fan base, we need right now. We need to just come together and try and figure out a strategy that's going to make the board at least stand up and pay attention, because that's, if there's two sides going against each other, you're not going to get anywhere with it.
No. Andrew, shouting at each other or booing at each other, we as Jock says there, we need someone to bring us together as a fan base that we could get behind. I just talk about the football games we use guys on here. I'm not an expert or what makes a good leader for this thing, but it isn't good. And what I do worry is that it's not that a certain fan group, whatever, walk out in 55 minutes. It's the fans just don't bother turning up at all anymore because they're so apathetic to it.
Yeah, that is the worry. You talk about somebody who could be this person that could come in. Well, the name Billy Walker keeps getting fired around, of course. The master distiller at I forget the name of the company. He keeps expressing interest in investing. Obviously, a bit of change would help, I think, especially especially when you look through the list of investors and from the previous regimes. Completely right about Patrick Stewart. He's just in the door. This isn't his mess. He's looking at changing things and making things better. I think people are annoyed at people on the board that have been there overseeing a lot of this that's been going on. But as Ryan said as well, you look at the money that potentially. Obviously, you can't drive a board out the club, and I'm not saying that you should drive a board out the club per se. We just had 40 million shares issued in, was it December, which generated about 8 million for the club. So obviously there's a lot of shares. There are some diluted shares in there, but there are people. We've got to look at New Oasis Asset, which is, of course, that's Dave King, isn't it? Majority shareholder. I think he's, about 13% he's got. I don't see that changing. I think Dave King has looked at selling his shares over the years, and there's never been an agreement with anybody anywhere close. So this is, it's not something easy. Nobody just comes in anymore and goes, yeah, I'll buy your football club. I'll buy your shares. It's, it's not that simple. And these people here will want a return on their investment that they have. And yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's a complex world. As fans, we need to be united, and we do need to be united. It might not be great. I have to take my blue tinted specs off at times and just take a step back and just oversee. The board are starting to make some changes. We've not rushed to get CEO in. We've looked at somebody that's got experience. All right, Manchester United aren't exactly the most successful run club in recent years, but there's a lot of experience there and a lot of contacts there. I'd like to see how this goes. As long as they're as upfront and as honest as they can be, then I'll have respect. But Patrick Stewart is the face of this at the minute, and I think that's the thing. He's the symbol of this because he's the man you look at, and I think that's where it is with a lot of the fans, especially the UB at the minute. But patience is wearing thin.
Well, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thanks very much for being on. Ryan, I'll come to you. Any final thoughts on what we've discussed this evening?
Yeah, probably something to add about, the so-called division between the supporters. We've also got to remember that we're actually trying to put ourselves here, that we're actually an attractive club to come and play for. So you can imagine that the club approach another club and an offer's accepted, between, and the way it's supposed to be, the legal process is it's then, once the clubs agree a price, you're then given permission to speak to the player through his agent. So if you're an agent and your players going up the road, you'd be looking at it going, are you really sure you want to go up there? Because see, at this moment in time, that place is upside down. They're wanting the fans wanting the board sacked. The fans are walking at the stadium. They're wanting the manager sacked. You really sure you want to go up and play up there? Because see, at this moment in time, might not be the best place for you to go. So we've got to make sure that we're representing ourselves correctly, representing the club right, because ultimately we want to be a place that, bigger and better people come and, apply their business.
Well, thanks for coming on, mate. Jock, you're same as yourself. Any final thoughts?
No, I think Ryan's basically stole what I was going to say there. He's right. We want to be an attractive place for somebody to come and play football, even if it's maybe only for a Scottish Cup and a run in Europe if you're not cup tied. So we're hoping that that's the sort of talent that we're trying to bring in the door and try and shore up the defence before the transfer windows shuts. But no, thanks for having me. It's been interesting.
You're very welcome. And Andrew, finally, again, thanks for coming on, mate. And any final things to say about what we've discussed?
No, do you know what? It's one of these things. we're not doing well at the minute. And, you know, the second we start playing decent football, start winning games, going on runs, obviously the fans will come back. But we need that. We need that soon. We can't be falling ridiculously far behind like we are now. This needs to get better, and Clermont needs to make sure this gets better. But yeah, no, thanks for having us on, Billy. Always a pleasure to come and speak about Rangers, even if times aren't great.
Good stuff, mate. Yeah, everyone, thank you very much for your comments at the side there. Hopefully, be able to highlight a few of them and discuss them. We're edging closer to 3,000 subscriptions on YouTube. We'd love to get there. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Please tell your friends about us as well. And also, if you like to listen to the pods go out in all the podcast networks as well, like your Apples and Spotify and Amazon and the other ones too. So if you like that, please subscribe to us on those channels too. But it just leaves me to say thank you again for watching, and remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.